Big royal news, French President Emmanuel Macron is heading to Windsor Castle this July for a full-on state visit hosted by King Charles himself. Hello, I'm Cameron Walker and you're watching GBN Royal. Now, in a statement, the palace said the President of the French Republic, His Excellency Emmanuel Macron, accompanied by Mrs. Brigitte Macron, has accepted an invitation from His Majesty the King to pay a state visit to the United Kingdom from Tuesday 8th of July to Thursday 10th of July 2025. The President and Mrs. Macron will stay at Windsor Castle. Now, Windsor Castle, the ancient fortress in Berkshire, is thought to be the chosen location to host the president because Buckingham Palace is in the middle of a major resurfacing programme lasting 10 years. This means many of the staterooms are out of action at the moment. Meanwhile, at Windsor, a red carpet welcome, military processions and a magnificent state banquet will take place amidst a backdrop of a complicated geopolitical landscape. Just yesterday, 600 small boat migrants left the French coast and arrived illegally in the UK, and there are calls for the French government to do more to stop them crossing the English Channel in the first place. Just last week, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, President Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz travelled to war-torn Ukraine in support of President Zelensky as he continues to fight off Russia's invasion. There's also the global turmoil caused by President Donald Trump's eye-watering tariffs, although the UK government has negotiated exemptions on car imports and certain metals. This is perhaps why the timing of the state visit is so significant. The first by a French president post-Brexit, and 2 years on from the King's successful visits to Paris and Bordeaux. The King invites a foreign head of state for a state visit on advice of his government, a unique card the Prime Minister has to play. It is this so-called soft power of the British monarchy which can strengthen relations between two nations. When Sir Keir Starmer dangled a carrot in front of the US president in February in the form of a royal invitation to his own state visit, he was widely praised for his diplomacy. Perhaps the promise of King Charles rolling out the red carpet for President Trump played a part in the subsequent trading negotiations. However, President Trump's state visit to the UK is not expected until September, meaning the French president will supersede him by 2 months. It is unclear how President Trump will react to the perception the British government is prioritising relations between the EU over the United States. However, I understand the French state visit was planned before His Majesty extended an invitation to President Trump. It will also be another opportunity for the UK and France, two NATO allies, to stand shoulder to shoulder in the face of continued Russian aggression in Eastern Europe. The royal family is well accustomed to buttering up a foreign head of state with pomp and pageantry ahead of tough political negotiations. I suspect President Macron will make at least one visit to 10 Downing Street during his time in the United Kingdom. Although the King can promote the shared customs and cultures between the UK and France, His Majesty stays well clear of politics. It is up to the British government to capitalise on this unique asset for the benefit of the British people. The King will host His Excellency Emmanuel Macron and Mrs. Macron from Tuesday 8th of July to Thursday 10th of July 2025, and we will keep you right up to date here on GB News. Here's me breaking the news on Britain's Newsroom earlier today with Andrew Pearce and Nana Okoya.
Buckingham Palace has announced that the King is to host French President Emmanuel Macron on a state visit to the UK next month.
How do you think Donald Trump's going to feel about that? Because we think he's coming in September, which means Macron's beaten him to it.
Well, and Zelensky beat him to it really as well.
Yeah, and he's not. I don't think he's a great fan of Macron's.
No, I don't think he is.
Fascinating, isn't it? Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker's here. So this has just broken in the last few minutes.
It has. Buckingham Palace has announced in the last few minutes, and you're right, this is likely to supersede Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that's going down in the White House. President Trump saying that state visit expected in September. The French president will be here at Windsor Castle, actually, between the 8th of July and the 10th of July, so around 8 weeks' time. The reason it's happening at Windsor Castle is because Buckingham Palace is being resurfaced, which means the state ballroom cannot be used for this magnificent state banquet, because of course the whole point of a state visit is to shore up relations between two nations. It will be on the advice of Sir Keir Starmer and the British government that the King has invited President Macron to the United Kingdom. So the King will kind of butter him up essentially at Windsor Castle, pulling out all the bells and whistles, a ceremonial welcome inside the upper ward. for the tough political negotiations to take place inside Downing Street. I suspect maybe this could be an opportunity for them to discuss the French border force and stopping the small boat. They could talk about trade with the EU, the Prime Minister this is, and of course joint law enforcement as well. But of course the King is very much going to be wielding his soft power in this instance. He won't get involved in those tough political negotiations. That is down to Keir Starmer and President Macron.
It's interesting time because Macron's second term comes to an end in 2027, so in a sense he's almost a lame duck president.
But he is still the president of France, and I think that will be what Keir Starmer is very mindful of when he asked the King to invite him for a state visit. Also, very interestingly, the president's actually going to be staying inside Windsor Castle, so he's not going to be staying at the French ambassador's residence. He is going to be staying overnight in a royal residence for 2 nights, which hasn't really happened in recent history, I suspect, because Buckingham Palace, as I said, is undergoing this resurfacing programme. And then we have to look across to September. Will President Trump be given that honour as well, staying inside Windsor Castle? I suspect he probably won't for security reasons, because he usually stays in the US ambassador's residence. However, the late Queen famously said, I think it was the President Ronald Reagan, that when they were looking at the security of Windsor Castle and all the Secret Service swarming around the building, she said, well, if it's good enough for me, then it should be good enough for the United States President. So yes, and this, of course, this is quite significant actually, because the last incoming French state visit was back in 2008, so before Brexit, way before Brexit, with Nicolas Sarkozy when he was president at the time. So it will be interesting to see how in this post-Brexit world, how this state visit goes down.
And Macron and Starmer have worked quite closely on what they called the coalition of the willing. He was talking about potentially putting British troops on the ground in Ukraine, and Macron was his sort of senior partner in those talks. They are quite close.
Absolutely, and we have seen in the last couple of days, haven't we, them on the train to go and visit President Zelensky as well. And as you say, the coalition of the willing, are we going to see troops, peacekeeping troops as they're being dubbed, on the ground in Ukraine if this ceasefire ever takes hold, if the war ever ends? We'll have to wait and see.
Fascinating.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and drop a comment down below. This has been Cameron Walker for GBM Royal.
Bonjour, Mr. Macron. King Charles is set to host French President Emmanuel Macron in a state visit to the United Kingdom in July, which means he gets here before Donald Trump does. And of course, a lot of people will recognise you because at the celebration at the palace, you were sitting next to His Majesty the King.
The King. There were 2 seats empty, you see, next to me. And I said, who's going to sit there to my daughter? She said, the King.
And he chatted away to you, didn't he?
Oh, he didn't stop talking to me. He wanted to know about my family and what I did after I came out of the WAFs, what I did in the WAFs, how old was I, Dave? What have I done since I came out?
Right.
So I said to him, well, my husband died quite early, so I took up sponsored walking.
Oh.
Raising money for the children in this country through the Children's Society.